I can already tell I'm gonna regret this lighting setup for this video.
What is this supposed to be? It's the thing that comes for your kids when you're not paying attention.
Dad, you have to listen to me.
Okay. I'm listening. Sweetheart, let me handle it.
But today we have the Boogeyman. On second thought, it actually gives me an excuse to bring these bad boys out. This is weird. I don't know what's a good combination here. Maybe I just leave it like that. Huh? I don't know. These are cool, and these are a cool cosplay item, but like I can't see shit in it. Not gonna lie, I'm a little bit creeped out in my house right now. I'm jumping at shadows. But yeah, the Boogeyman. It's one of those films that you see a trailer for, and it's one of those like summer non-blockbuster PG-13 jump scare fests with a positive, like, you know, silver lining caveat that it's based off of a pre-existing work by Stephen King. Now, as we know, Stephen King, in my opinion, is one of the best writers, for one, period, that exists, but one of, if not my favorite horror writers. I know it's easy to hop on that King bandwagon, but that's my personal take. I think Stephen King is one of, if not my favorite, horror writers that are out there. Particularly because I do enjoy his portrayal of insanity, descent into madness, and just the grisly, visceral descriptions he can give of people that are being, you know, killed, murdered, even when terrible things happen. I think he's a great writer. So this is a film that's based off of a pre-existing story about the Boogeyman, or the director of the Boogeyman is and you gotta love the name, a Rob Savage. Mr. Savage over here. He's been directing shorts and little things like episodes of TV here and there since about 2012. He only has technically 2 other films under his belt in terms of major filmography. He did Dashcam most recently rather, and then a movie called Host. Not to be confused with The Host, which is a fantastic foreign film, by the way, if you get a chance to check that one out. First of all, the leading lady, like the older of the 2 sisters, Sophie Thatcher. So, funny story, she is one of the 2 stars in a film, and this film, no one's heard about this film, and I cannot recommend it enough. It's a great little underrated sci-fi survival story called Prospect. And that face... those faces look familiar. She's like the surrogate daughter character, more or less, but Pedro Pascal's in this. Nobody's heard of Prospect. I personally really enjoyed Prospect. I watched it on a whim as part of Cinema Chats way back when I actually did that and did like those live recorded commentaries that like nobody listened to. Inverse of that, I've never watched this show and I hear mixed things, but she's also she's been in Yellow Jackets, that one show. I don't know what it's about, but I think she's one of the main gals in it, I think. I think the other 2 main characters are kind of split down the middle, but we have one who I knew I recognized him from something, and I recognized his voice too, but with the beard, I guess it threw me off. But you have Chris Messina, who most recently, I mentioned his character a little bit from a previous film I reviewed called Air. He was this like shrewd, funny, kind of asshole lawyer in Air. But even crazier, I actually did give him props and cover him years ago when I covered, I think I reviewed Birds of Prey. I'm pretty sure that I did. I remember I gave credit to the dynamic that Roman Sionis and Victor Zsasz had. Chris Messina, the guy who plays this father and psychologist, grieving widower in this, was Victor Zsasz, which I think is crazy. I loved his Victor Zsasz in that. It was different and it wasn't well received, but cool, there was that. The biggest surprise to me is the little girl in this, the little girl who's being primarily terrorized by the Boogeyman, who gets bodied in the trailer and in this movie, Vivien Lyra Blair, who doesn't have, I mean, she's so young, she doesn't have a massive filmography, but she played, say what you want about the show, she was like young Princess Leia in Obi-Wan. I was like, holy crap, like look at all these connections and all this. This is a who's who of surprising little cast tidbits. One of my favorite actors out there, and I love the diversity of roles that he's in, David Dastmalchian. David Dastmalchian, he's one of the figures, the main figureheads of the trailer for this film, and he's barely in it. he's barely in it, and it was so upsetting to see that. I do love that he's in. I give him a shout out whenever I can. This film was actually pretty good. Like, I think that the marketing both hurt and helped. It showed off too much, I feel. There were still some bits of, Boogeyman creeps and antics in the movie that happened outside of the trailer, but the trailer kind of showcases a lot of the creepiest moments, I believe. A lot of the creepiest moments and a lot of the jump scares for sure. This film is actually, I thought it was actually pretty creepy. I will say the audience that I was seeing this with was probably one of the worst audiences I've seen a film with in a while. Most everybody was okay, I guess, but behind us and to the right, there were these guys that would not shut the fuck. Like, they were just it sounded like they got zooted before they came to the movie, and were just, like, conversing through most of it, just low murmurs and rumbles and just talking. And even after a few times of the audience, all of us collectively being like, shush, or just like, shut the fuck up, guys, they just wouldn't stop talking. And it got to a point we all kind of went into like, what it is what it is, we're not gonna make a big deal out of it. I didn't feel up for a fight that night, so I was just like, all right, screw it. So between them talking in the back row and then right in front of us, the gals, there were these gals, they were great, they were reactive, but they also wouldn't get off their phones. So, I mean, look, I had to really tunnel vision this one for the movie. But all that aside, the movie was still enjoyable. I think that for the pros, the Boogeyman creature design is cool. It's a cool take on the Boogeyman. It's almost reminiscent of creatures from other works that I've seen in terms of its like motivations, the lore, how it follows. It doesn't really haunt a location, but so much it haunts people. And of course the whole thing is it goes after people that are like hurting or in grief or vulnerable. And it does kind of that, again, that very Stephen King thing of trying to scare, spook, and terrorize its victim before it goes in and goes for the kill, which is just giving you the good suck, basically sucking the life out of you. The trailer ruins a lot of the creepy moments, and you have not seen most of those creepy moments, then you're going to be in for a treat. I think that there are actually a lot of well shot creepy moments in this film. There's a couple jump scares that actually did get me. I was not expecting them, so bravo there. Normally you can kind of tell when a jump scare is coming a mile away because films often will telegraph them. They either ramp up to an obvious scare or they ramp up to a false scare, then turn around and deliver the real scare. This one actually had some moments that like will purposefully, you think one thing's happening and it catches you off guard because you're not really expecting, there's not really a ramp up to a spooky moment. What I do love about this film, and it plays on a real anxiety and fear of mine. All of us as humans, and a lot of films do prey on this, we naturally don't like the dark. Some of us do. I mean, if you like a sensory deprivation tank or whatever, sure, but it's that fear of the unknown and the darkness. And for me, what really gets me, and this film does really a good job on, what Skinamarink wishes it could try to have done better, but other films have succeeded as well, it's like dark hallways, it's those dark corners, the whole fact that this thing like doesn't like the light, right? Like light, fire, whatever. So, for us, light is always hope, it's a beacon of safety. Everything from movies like this to games like Alan Wake or whatever, the light's always a safe spot, but going to the dark is always something where it's like, anything could be lurking in there. It's the fear of the unknown, whatever could lurk in the darkness, and it's just this implicit fear, and the film does a good job of setting up shots that show that closet door that is pitch black inside and there's no way of knowing what could be looking possibly back out at you from inside, and the dark hallways, those little corners of darkness. This film was very creepy in a lot of moments that I was tense. There are moments that if it weren't for the trailer I would have been very, very scared, but already I was very creeped out in this film. The actors all do a fine job, more or less. I mean, I have no complaints about the main family, even if I do have complaints about their characters and how they react to the situations. I think all the actors did a good job of bringing their depression, their fear, their anxiety to the film itself. Isn't anything that's like gonna put them down in horror history to the level of like Hereditary or something. No, the story is there's a little bit of convolution. When we get to when the haunting really starts, like everything makes sense, but getting up to that is a little bit like The narrative mostly works, and the logic behind why the Boogeyman is like haunting and terrorizing this family one by one, it makes sense, you know? I think the main cons that I have with this film are its characters and character decisions. Like there's, like for one, the father, the husband, right? The grieving widow now, but the father, he's supposed to be a therapist. This man, if you've seen this movie, this man is one of the worst therapists I've ever seen. I get it. He lost his wife, so he's in a bad headspace. But the fact that he's in that bad headspace and he's still practicing while starting, you know, antidepressants and drinking and all this. There's literally a scene where his daughter's trying to open up to him about the trauma of losing her mother and all this, and he looks her in the eye and is like, well, have you thought about talking to your therapist about this? Like, dude, you're her dad. I know that you're not ready to talk about mommy dearest or whatever, but Jesus. And he kind of does the same thing with his clients and all that. He just, like, you see this like mental detachment from them, like he's just begrudgingly practicing therapy. But for someone who's a therapist, he does not do any of the things you should be doing as a therapist. Help your clients, help your family, or just like be a logical, helpful person in general. And of course, I think the youngest, like you can give her a pass because a little kid, right? Like how many logical decisions can a little kid really make when you're terrified and when you're being tricked by a being that can literally mimic the voices of your family? But the other sister, from a logical perspective, there's plenty of situations where it's like, clearly this area here is dangerous. Don't go in here. Don't explore this. Stay out of the darkness. Even if you doubt what's happening, you've seen enough creepy shit going on, and there's enough corroborating evidence where you can, I don't know, maybe not go and check out the creepy noise, or maybe keep some more lights on or leave the area. I don't know. There's a lot of moments where, you know, for us, we're like, oh, don't go in there, or like, oh, think about your survival here. It's nothing that bogs the film down too much, but there were plenty of moments where it's like, okay, horror movie logic is out the window here. You know, we're being driven purely by emotions and just like white people curiosity, I guess. Normally, bullies in Stephen King movies, you hate them, but you logically hate them. Normally, a bully they'll pick what really makes you the most self-conscious, further you as an outcast, or because they think that you're weird or whatever. But literally, like, the one main blonde little bitch really gets the group to rag on our main character here. Her logic is literally like, oh, your mom's dead. Why are you acting so weird? Judging the character's grieving process. And it gets just weirder and weirder. She just ends up being unnecessarily mean to this poor girl, but for the most illogical reasons, where it's like, oh my God, like, what's wrong with you? Like, your mom died, so what? It's so weird that the bully was just so nonsensical. I don't even know if the bully knew why she was doing what she was doing. Or there's more that works about this film than doesn't work. I mean, this film can be a little bit like dramatic at some times. It's very tropey here and there, but also creepy stuff happens, and there are some creepy shots. There's some scary moments of terror. There's a few moments where it pushes the PG-13 envelope, and you know, I mean, like, usually you don't think anything bad can happen to kids, but bad shit really happens to kids in this movie. This movie could have been a lot worse. Could have been a lot better. It's just above the middle of the road. We had a good time. I had a better time than I thought I would. I'm glad I caught it in theaters while I could. It's one of those films where it's not going to be, you know, oh my God, this is some of the better horror films, subversive horror, have to recommend this and all that. But it's one of those films, I know I mentioned it last time, but it's one of those films like Mama, or just one of those like, or like Oculus, or not as good as Oculus, but one of those films that's just, you know, just above that average bar of what most horror and thriller movies are, and it's just a little bit above average. And for that reason, you know, you can probably see where I'm going with this. I would easily give The Boogeyman like a high 3 out of 5. A high 3 out of 5, it's above average. If you don't like horror, thriller, or anything in this kind of genre, and like not a big fan of Stephen King, you could probably skip this one. Sure, maybe go see it in theaters. I wouldn't recommend against seeing it in theaters. I don't think I'll buy it when it comes out. The Boogeyman is nothing that's going to be super memorable. It's not in my top 10 for the year, but it was above average. It was an above average horror thriller. Stephen King adaptations, they can be hit, they can be miss. I like this one. So thank you guys and gals so much for watching. Stay tuned for the next episode of whatever movie I review. And goodbye, travelers.